We were laughing about, before we started recording, we were like talking about like if Weird Al parodied like a Little Durk song, and he's like, "What? Why are people mad at me? Why is everyone yelling at me?"
Rumsfeld was known not just for his sort of pithy wisdom and bon mots, like the one I just said, but also for his famous memos. And this was one of the best ones. This was dated November 23, 2001, to Paul Wolfowitz, CC, Doug Feith, Steve Cambone, from Donald Rumsfeld, regarding: we ought to think through what are the bad things that could happen and what are the good things that could happen that we need to be ready for in both respects. Please give me a list of each. Thanks.
So few leaders are willing to ask those questions. Yeah, my favorite Rumsfeld fact is that in the 80s, when he was a corporate executive just waiting for his chance to come back into government, he was often hired by the Rand Corporation to take part, along with Dick Cheney when he was in Congress, in these Cold War nuclear strategy games, and he would play the president, which is a position that he sought, and he made some efforts to actually run for president before he became W's secretary.
Well, the president class is OP in those war games.
Yeah, and so Rumsfeld played the president in the war games. And so they would start some sort of simulated nuclear crisis with the Soviets, and then he would game it out from the White House, from the fake White House in the bunker that they did this thing. And every single time he played the president, the war game ended in total nuclear annihilation of everything on Earth.
Did he consider that a win? Was he just like...
I think he did. It's like, well, that's the end of communism. We did it.
Good news, bad news. Good news, no more communism. Bad news, no more anything.
Well, those are the good and bad events we need to prepare for. The good event, end of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Bad event, end of all other life on Earth. Could you give me up a list of some of the pros and cons of that scenario that I'm seeking to enact on the world? I don't know where this is. I'm skipping ahead because I think here she gets into like how to actually do a good crust. So this is how to do it right. Cooking is art, baking is chemistry, they say, and by and large that's true. Cook an entree with a relatively free hand, and you might produce something pretty good.
Oh my God, we get it! It's understood. Everyone knows what that means.
But
everyone knows what that means. Everyone with a basic understanding of the English language gets the metaphor.
But you can't just toss some dry ingredients together with fat and a little liquid and hope you pour or a delightfully cooked crisp cookie.
Everyone knows that.
You have to get the ingredients exactly right. Weigh and sift and fill your liquid measure at every level, making sure not to add even a drop too much. Preheat your oven and butter and flour in your pans. Add the ingredients in order. If you do all that, you will likely produce something tasty.
Oh my God. I watched the show.
You just have to say the thing. You just have to. It's implicit.
This one comes courtesy of sort of engagement farmer and music journalist Eric Alper.
I don't think you should call him an engagement. Like, what about him is These are just legitimate questions he asks for people.
Okay.
He wants to know.
Yeah, he
has
wants to
a
know.
thirst for knowledge.
Yeah, have you ever woken up like in the middle of the night and been like, what's one album cover that's way different than the music inside the album? Like, I wonder, those are the questions we've wondered since the dawn of man.
Well, I feel like, could you fill in the audience in case they're unfamiliar with Eric Alper? Could you describe him just a little bit more? I mean, like, his main thing is asking questions.
In 1968, a perfect child was born in Canada. 3 years later, he had a horrifying brain injury that would cause him to have many questions about the world. Some would say this brain injury even represents like a new stage in human evolution, that he's sort of sidestepped, advanced past, leapfrogged past 500 years of human mind development to be the ultimate man and ask the true questions that we didn't even have the words to describe yet. He is a Sirius XM radio host, which is the most respected job in Canada, and he will get on every day and ask these questions. You will stay awake for the rest of your lives thinking about this. He'll get on. He'll say, what's one song where you're always excited to hear the beginning of it? You know, what's one movie that you always watch when it rains? Who's an artist that you think would be weird to meet? And people like really like all the 47-year-old like Manitobans on Twitter are just like, this is fucking sick. Eric, you're the man. I love you, Eric.
I mean, sort of the genius of his questions is how like open-ended they are. I mean, like there's not really a specific. It's like, what's your favorite rock song with guitar in it? You know, it's it's stuff like that. It could really be like almost anything you could reply to. But like, I'm just gonna get just like
you could reply to any of Eric Alper's questions with music, and you'd be right.
Yeah,
like it's like
so. An advisor to Hillary Clinton, reassuring Rebecca Traister on election night that, had they been elected, the good guys would have been in charge. And then eventually there will be a new Democratic administration, and all of the groundwork has been laid for this new sea change in long sought after progressive policies.
That's interesting. Who's coming after Biden? It's an interesting question.
I mean, there are noises.
Do you think it's Kamala? Is that what she thinks? Is that what she fucking thinks?
Nobody thinks that. Even Democrats. They're like, well, God, this lady is not going to win. And they're fine with that.
Kamala is the only person who thinks it's going to be Kamala next. It's incredible. I love like dirty old Joe, just so like mentally deficient, wandering around ice cream parlors. Anytime anyone asks him a question, he's like, come on, man, it's Arbor Day. But he knows enough to be like, hey, Kamala, it's your job to go to the border. It's your job to take over this incredibly like divisive, explosive issue.
That we have no solution for.
We have no solution
trying to
for.
Snow you into thinking that we're doing anything about
this, like reality of the current American economy. That we have this spigot of people coming in, people whose countries we fucked up in one way or the other. They are fulfilling this need that all our companies have for like illegally cheap labor, like paying people well below what they should be paid. We realize we have to have it because this thing has to keep going, but we can't have too much. We can't have too much because people get mad, and we already like don't have the safety net for anyone. So you have to go there and say, just send us the right amount of people. And you're going to do that, Kamala, with your trademark ability to always say the right thing, to always come off, in a way. No one, Kamala goes in a room, she leaves. No one ever goes, what the fuck was that woman talking about? What kind of person even is that? What the fuck's up with her? No one ever says that.
Everyone always thinks, wow, Kamala, that certainly is an appropriate time to just burst into laughter.
Yeah, no one's ever met Kamala and been like, that's the weirdest fucking woman I've ever met in my entire life. That's never happened. So, props to Joe. Still has one trick in the book. This one.
Yeah, he gave her the border and voting rights. I mean, like that should tell you everything about how much they actually care about achieving any kind of corrective to the massive voter suppression laws that are going on.
Nothing's getting done. But
I did see like because pieces are starting to get planted in the press, and we've all been alluding to it about like how like top Democrats are saying that like Kamala ain't it, and that like she would lose to any Republican or even Trump himself should he run again. If she gets put out there, and then of course like her defenders, like I've seen this sort of spate of reactions to these articles, being like, oh wow, what's changed that all of a sudden that like a vice president is getting all of this criticism and anger directed at them, and I'm like. I mean, like Dick Cheney was vice president for 8 years, and then like you don't have to go back that far to find like Dan Quayle or Spiro Agnew. It's just like being VP is like you're always. It's like either you can be a VP that nobody talks about, or you can be a VP that like takes all the abuse for the administration that you're in.
That's what Kamala is doing. She's taking all the abuse that should be meant for Joe and everyone else, and I would feel bad for her, but it's like, hey, you got what you wanted, didn't you? I mean, it's not going to do anything for her. Joe he's at the numbers of one of those like Kyrgyzstan dictators who puts up like a giant bronze statue of himself that rotates all around the country.
Giant bronze statue
Joe's
of
at, like-
Major.
Yeah, Joe's at like 74%. He's at something crazy, and he's like that because like most of the people that voted for him, everything that's supposed to turn you off about Joe Biden, most of the people who voted for him are like, I do that.
Yeah.
That's cool to do. I smell hair. I like forget who people's names are, and I just hang out in ice cream parlors all the time. It's all I do.
Like the ice cream thing is perfect because like every time I see them do another photo op of him deep throating a fucking ice cream cone, I just think this makes him look senile. But for the nation's vast number of senile voters, they're like, I could go for some ice cream.
Yeah, no, it's exactly like, we like talking about George H.W. Bush because he was such a good bridge, because he was the last guy, really, where Americans are like, no, I want someone who's better than me. Like, that's what they thought about him. I want a cold patrician. Like, a guy who openly says something as cold as, I will never apologize for my country, right or wrong. After shooting down an Iranian... Yeah, an Iranian passenger jet. Then, with Clinton, people wanted someone who was like them, who they thought was like them. With George W. Bush, you go, oh, he's stupid like my dad. Vote for him. And with Biden, Biden's the highest end of that. He really reflects us more than Trump, far more. But it is amazing, like the amount of manpower put into convincing you're seeing more than you're actually seeing. It's amazing. This Tracer article, what is this, the 50th article like this?
Yep.
What the fuck is this? Rebecca, you were late to the party. They were writing these back in March. What's going on?
Yeah.
You're usually ahead of the curve. What's up? You're not on the email list anymore? What's up?
So I've actually transcribed the lyrics to the Big Money from Senator Jay Bulworth, and I figured we could just go through it here and do some like rap genius stuff on these bars, these Warren Beatty lyrics here. So his freestyle begins, one man, one vote. Now, is that really real? The name of our game is Let's Make a Deal. Now, people have their problems, the haves and have-nots, but the ones who make me listen pay for 30-second spots. Ooh!
This is yeah.
The rhythm of this is like very like Sugar Hill Gang.
Yeah,
It's like
It's a Matt
Or it's
Christman style of rap.
Yeah, it's like
It's when rap was good. Yes.
it's Matt Christman. Yeah, it's like someone put Matt at gunpoint and was like, you have to like make a Curtis Blow song.
I just give them credit for it. No point does he say, my name's Bulworth and I'm here to say.
That was probably
I was
in the
waiting
first
for that
draft.
one.
And then at the very last scene is Amiri Baraka's character comes back, and he's outside the hospital addressing directly, like the screen, addressing the viewer directly. And he comes back to this line he says over and over again. He says, you got to be a spirit. You can't be no ghost. And that's sort of the I don't know. What do you guys make of that line? You got to be a spirit. You can't be no ghost. We need a spirit, Bulworth. What do you think is the sort of the import of that final closing bit of poetry from Amiri Baraka?
Well, I have sort of a different take on the whole thing than you will, in that, in the way I see it, he hires the guy to kill him. He says, take me out. Because he's reached the end. He's disgusted with himself, what he's become, what his party's become, and he doesn't know any other way to deal with it. So he hires the guy to kill him, and then he gets shot, and the entire film is him in his death throes, sort of Jacob's Ladder style, building a fantasy whereby he can ascend to heaven, i.e., get an N-word pass from someone. From a hot black lady, speak the truth to power, and then become the real liberal fantasy, which is not of changing things, because they don't have any kind of idea of like a end state of betterment. They're always just ameliorative. The great sort of ascension of a liberal is to be a martyr.
Yeah.
Like the very first shot of the movie is Martin Luther King and Malcolm X shaking hands. And in the picture that is in his office, and he wants to be that, but because he's gone along with the Democratic Party's, drift into neoconservatism, he has no ability, and so the whole movie is him figuring out a way where he's not killing himself. He's being murdered by the insurance industry to stop him from overthrowing, all the evil in the world that he has contributed to with his entire political career, and now deeply regrets. And then Amiri Baraka coming through over and over again is sort of like, the Grim Reaper figure, sort of reminding him that he is in fact not just that he might die at any minute, but that he is already dying.
Wow, I think you hit the nail on the head, Matt. That the Jacob's Ladder interpretation of this movie makes a whole lot more sense. Is that like this? He has the sort of suburban dad, white guy fantasy of becoming a rapper, but because he's also a Democratic senator, he has a fantasy of absolving himself of all the evil he's done in the world and achieving the level of heroism of his idols like RFK, Martin Luther King, etc. And I think you're right. The idea is that like you want to be martyred to history. You don't want to change history because you can't.
Right.
And this is, that's what a Democrat's fantasy. Everyone thinks I'm good, then I die. So
Yes.
people have to think I'm good forever. That's it.
And
Because like the civil rights movement really is the beginning of like the eruption of the conscience of the American liberal, right? Like that's where all these guys' politics were forged. And so like the struggle for black equality is like what they have always gauged themselves by. And like the entirety of the Clintonite turn is essentially the final and irrevocable betrayal of black America by the Democratic establishment, the sacrifice of them, which was what welfare reform was, the crime bill, all that stuff was a sacrifice to maintain their power. And this whole movie is him being absolved of that guilt by being fully embraced in every way, and then finally like absorbed into these people who stand as like his subconscious like moral arbiters, because like they're always who he evaluated his own worth in comparison to, like his relationship to their struggle.
Was Martin Luther the original poster? I know it's sort of a cliche to say at this point, but I mean, the similarities are striking. Trolling the Catholic Church, etc.
Yeah, I really, honest to God, I think Martin Luther would have done great on Twitter for like 4 years, and then he would have completely melted his brain, because he the Martin Luther's defining characteristic as a person was that he could never let a challenge go unanswered. So, and he always had to win. He always had to get the last word, which would lend itself very neatly to a medium like Twitter. It's what made him so good at pamphlets, because somebody would say something, Martin Luther would write back, they would say something else, and Martin Luther would write back. And that's how the Reformation develops. It's not like big statements of faith about this is what we believe and we're Protestants now. It's no, Martin Luther was pissed off that somebody said something, so Martin Luther said something back, and it just kind of got more and more and more extreme.
It's forum stuff. It's forum war. Yeah.
That's exactly what the Reformation is. That's how we should understand it.
A question like all this book, and like you're writing this in the present and 2020, 21, and like as a historian, you're writing about like a series of decades that like in hindsight, you can see the way that like they shape the world that we live in today. I mean, it certainly seems like it's impossible to do in the present moment, but it certainly seems like we as a culture, an economy, a country, whatever you want to say, are just being hit with wave after wave of like world historical level crises or shifts that we're currently experiencing and undergoing. Like as a historian, like what do you look for in our present moment for things that could conceivably be, theoretically in a future point, be like a verge moment that like we're currently experiencing now?
So I think that's a really good question. What I look for, and this is true, I think, of historical periodization in general, is that you should be looking for clusters of things that happen around the same time. That if you want to define the end of one era and the beginning of another, you want clusters of things that happen that in seemingly unrelated fields that you can say, yes, we're doing something different now. And I think you can do that about the present. The one that really strikes me for the pandemic is the fairly sudden reminder that like workers think their bosses suck, and you don't just have to do the shit that they tell you to do all the time. Like you can quit your job. You can ask for more money. Like that. I think that's a really huge and fundamental shift that has been decades in the making and has now kind of exploded into being purely as a result of this contingent set of circumstances. So there are structural roots to it, but there's contingency in the sense that who knows whether this actually would have happened or not without the pandemic. And so it makes, I think that particular thing is one example that makes, that shows us how a critical juncture can work and how it can happen. That it's a combination of these long-term trends toward immiseration of working people, plus the exogenous stimulus of having a massive pandemic that makes clear that these people's lives and work is not valued the way it should be. Like, so that's one that I think about a lot, that I think you can see the roots of it, that if decades from now we have a more successful labor movement, I think we'll be able to trace it back to this specific set of circumstances.
Yeah, and the difference between guys like Trump and the politics of Trump and the politics of guys like Vance is that guys like Vance are still worried about the teacher grading their paper. They're worried that they're not meeting some sort of obligation to like transcendent notions of intellectual consistency, ideological coherence, the voice of the teacher, basically. And guys like Trump actively oppose that entire concept. And they are hostile to the notion that there could be anybody judging them. Any transcendent social notion, any people the teacher is out. It's like, fuck that. Trump was at CPAC in Dallas giving his speech, and he's talking about how they impeached him twice and how they thought like they were going to get him to behave, and he says, "I got worse." I got worse.
So good.
They went wild. We want to impeach him. We're going to impeach Bill Barr. We're going to impeach him. He became different. I understand that. I didn't become different. I got impeached twice. I didn't change. I became worse.
Like he has inverted their value system, and that has freed him. He's free. And if there's one thing you can notice is who are the people who are really in this and who aren't, it's how free they are. It's how free they are to not give a shit and in fact orient themselves against any sort of social obligation or monitoring or values that are not their own. And then you got nerds like fucking Vance trying to fucking carry the two on this shit, and nobody fucking cares.
It's the difference between having an intellectualized ideal of social and natural order and having a purely gut-driven idea of what natural and social order is supposed to be. And for people like Trump and those who are most suited to follow in his footsteps, there's only the raw, bleeding sense that they're better, and that whatever any justification is ex post facto. It's like it's the you start from the assumption that you're better and reason outward from there. You don't take some sort of objective evidence and have it lead you to the conclusion that you're better. It's just like to the extent that like the racism is incidental to Trumpism, it comes from that. It's like we already know that we're better. All of that is just reasoning outward from that basic assumption.
Bolsonaro may have emergency surgery after hiccups persist for over 10 days. President transferred to Sao Paulo to determine if procedure necessary after surgeon diagnoses him with bowel obstruction.
I like it. I like how Bolsonaro, he's like gotten every plague from Exodus and then like new ones. Like God invented new ones after he started like cutting down the Amazon, and he's like, damn, I'm just like really unlucky.
I mean,
I
think
he's
like
the most
bullshit.
powerful. He's the most powerful mind in history because God has been telling him every moment of the day for his entire term that he should die and that he should not be on Earth anymore. And it's not even like he's defying him, which would have its own issues. He just isn't even aware.
Yeah,
that's how powerful he is.
He's like dumb
God,
Job.
God is contacting him so much. He's like something beyond a prophet.
Yeah.
He's like on like God's on his green tab on Instagram, and he's just like whatever. I don't care.
Bolsonaro dies and goes to heaven, and he says, God, why didn't you send me any messages? I was waiting to receive them. And God says, you idiot, I sent you 5 bowel obstructions and an emu.
And a stabbing and COVID multiple times. Because he had COVID like multiple times, right?
Yeah, I sent emus after you, like two in 1 week.
They say that they had to pull like a pound of shit out of his colon through his nose.
Oh,
Wait, what?
I mean, yeah, no, this is true. In order to prepare Bolsonaro for surgery, they had to remove over 2 pounds of shit from his blocked intestine through a tube in his nose.
Why bother trying?
I mean, you know, like, because like every photo of Bolsonaro, he's like in a hospital bed looking like E.T. when he's dying, giving the thumbs up.
Is this?
And he always has a tube up his nose, and are we led to believe that in every single one of those pictures, just pounds of fecal matter are just pouring out of him?
Well,
pouring out of his nose.
It's like getting your car worked on. Like if they're working on your transmission, it's like, yeah, I don't know, like clean it up while you're there too.
Yeah.
Like fuck it. Like if you're already here to like, you know, put an iPad on my pancreas or whatever they're doing to him. Can you also like suck shit through my nose? Just, you know, rotate the tires a little bit.
So yeah, Bolsonaro continuing health problems. It says forced to undergo emergency surgery after he was rushed to the hospital in the early hours of Wednesday, complaining of abdominal pain. Bolsonaro, 66, was reportedly admitted to a military hospital in the capital at about 4 a.m. after being struck down by an unremitting bout of the hiccups, which has lasted for more than 10 days.
That does sound scary. Like I've had that feeling.
That's
when
horrible.
When you're the hiccups won't stop, and you do worry because isn't there a line in The Sopranos where Christopher talks about a guy who had the hiccups for his whole life and he killed himself?
Yeah.
And it is unpleasant, but of course, you know, when you hear it's Bolsonaro, it's instantly funny that he's possibly in life-threatening situations because he has the hiccups.
Well, and also because it's like there's so much poop in his body that it's protruding into his diaphragm, causing him to hiccup constantly. Like it's very annoying.
There's like a brown bubble that comes out every time he hiccups.
He just tastes poop every time he hiccups.
I don't know.
Like I would say like if I had like a quarter of his illnesses, I'm just like killing myself. I'm just ending it.
It's like a Monty Burns thing.
Well, obviously, yeah. It is interesting. I mean, what is left, you know, now for him to happen to him after all? He's done everything now.
I gotta say, leprosy. I'm putting $5 on the leprosy square of the gambling cube.
Just an arm.
It's gonna be leprosy.
Or like being dropped into the like fluid from Roger Rabbit.
He's gonna get dipped.
Yeah.
He'll have the Ricardo Montalban Naked Gun moment where he falls and then a parade steps over him and then a steamroller.
Yeah, they're making the shit from Roger Rabbit in Brazil. That's what Mengele and all those guys are doing. That's what they were actually like researching during the Holocaust, and they fled to South America.
Yeah, that's what their Nazi doctors are for.
I don't know. The canary in the coal mine, I guess we need to find the Brazilian Stanchera and then determine from their health and if they've gone out whether Bolsonaro is.
Well, the Brazilian Stanchera is a guy named like Pythagoras Borinho Jr. Grunter, who like he like owns a like more evil version of the Willy Wonka factory. Like that's equivalent to Stanchera over there.
Yeah. Former President Trump, in a statement Thursday, denied that he ever threatened or spoke about taking part in a government coup after his election loss, adding that Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Mark Milley, would be one of the last people he'd ask to take part in a coup.
Isn't that just? It's just the perfect.
To do such
it's the perfect cattiness about something that is like, you know, it's a taking out, you know, some real estate deal or apprentice moment and then just putting in taking over the government, and he still speaks about it the same way. Just picture it's, you know, it's Operation, we talk about Operation Mockingbird with he'd be like Operation Tweety Bird. It'd be just so not so good. I don't think so. And it's just like he just goes from one topic to the next, same vibe.
Oh yeah.
Brendan's really got an underrated Trump impression.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
It comes out like
you just have to have a stuffy nose is all the
That is a big key that a lot of people miss, yeah.
Hello, this is your president. The opioid and drug crisis has affected almost every family in our country. It's devastating, and we've made a lot of progress, a lot of tremendous progress. But we have take-back
It's
day.
devastating, and we've made a lot of progress.
We want you to go out and collect all of those drugs and opioids and everything you have that you know what's good and you know what's bad. and bring it into a location near you. There are lists available everywhere.
Everywhere.
Get rid of them. We want to clean out the United States of all of this excess bad product that people can grab onto, they can do things with, and when they do things, that's not good.
And when they do things, that's not
celebrate our country, and one of the ways we're going to celebrate our country is Take Back Day. So go in, do the best you can, get rid of it. It's no good, not going to do you good, and certainly not going to do anybody else any good.
This is like it's the best. It is the best piece of like Trump anything, in my opinion.
I think that, you know, the certainly the attitude we've taken in our show is not one of optimism about what the Biden administration had any willingness to do to ease the Trump restrictions and sanctions on Cuba. But again, they're kind of just dodging it altogether. They weren't renewing a push to isolate or really pull the ripcord on regime change either. And of course, that would be very odd given that Biden was Obama's VP, and there is some expectation of at least neutrality on one of the Obama administration's key foreign policy initiatives. So all this is to say that to answer your initial question, Will, the Cuban people have been hurting for a while. They've been hurting even more the past couple of years, I would argue, and I think it's fairly easy to prove, due to the increased tightness and unforgiving nature of the embargo, and that the Cuban government knows this and has actually been discussing reforms. They've been discussing reforms for a long time. This is something we talk about with our guests. There are ways that the political system is changing there. And in fact, the 8th Party Congress of the Cuban Communist Party in April openly acknowledged this kind of stuff. And of course, you know, there is a different leader now in Cuba that is not a Castro. And I think that was part of why the Biden administration was looking to just sit this one out for a while and see what transpired. However, an opportunistic moment like this is not going to go unnoticed by elements of, I'm sure, our intelligence community and by Cuban expats and so forth to exploit a moment of discontent on the island. But I think, again, be skeptical. Anyone who's listening to ideas that this is just all over the island, it's really what we're now learning is it's the opposite, is that those kinds of stories are being debunked in real time, and that the Instagram, like weird pastel graphics that you're seeing on your feed about this is what you need to know, there's a genocide happening in Cuba, that is just far, far away from any kind of realistic representation that people are going to believe for much longer, I would say.
All right. This is a message to the world. We need to stand up, step up, but if you don't understand what's going on, then you need to wake the fuck up.
That's right.
Not only is this a Cuba event, a Cuba thing, this is a world event. This isn't about politics. This is about saving lives. This is about unity, not division. And bottom line, this is about taking action. Let me tell you something, why I'm frustrated and when I see everybody out there and doing what they're doing, which I love what they're doing. We live for freedom, we ride for freedom, we die for freedom, but we motherfucking appreciate freedom.
Wait, what?
And it gets me hot, it bothers me, and it frustrates me to a certain extent, being a Cuban American and having a platform to speak to the world and not being able to help my own people. Not being able to get them food, not being able to get them water, not being able to get them medicine, but most of all, not being able to help and really get them what they deserve, which is freedom. And this is my way of talking to the world. All world allies get together to help. Global businesses get together to help. People that we're so proud of, people such as Jeff Bezos, Cuban American, graduated from high school in Miami, built one of the biggest companies in the world, the richest man in the world. He's somebody that can get involved and really help us on what we got. All
Imagine if Jeff Bezos posted a hashtag. Politics
are going to be politics. And while they figure out what they figure out, we need to figure out how to really help. We need to get creative. We need to figure out solutions while they're losing their lives over there literally for something that we wake up every day and appreciate, which is freedom. So to everybody out there, stand up, step up, and if you don't understand, get with the motherfucking program and wake up.
There you go.
This is about
freedom,
and it's about human rights.
All right.
And to everybody in Cuba, keep the fight up. Para todos los cubanos que están allá afuera y todo lo que está pasando en Cuba ahora mismo, ustedes son lo que va a motivar el mundo, inspirar el mundo para que vean lo que es de verdad vivir y morir por la libertad.
There we go.
That really does show you
Mr.
the
Worldwide.
absolute the sterility of this as anything other than a make work project for fucking Instagram people and like the PSYOP division of Langley. What is the call to action there?
To make your voice heard.
Make your
tell
voice
Jeff,
heard, like-
tell Jeff Bezos to get involved
Yeah.
and
I mean-
get awareness of Cuba.
You can't emotionally manipulate someone who's already doesn't care.
And I just want to underline that that's really by design. When the American empire was being created in the 40s, the people who did it were like, we're not going to give ordinary Americans any say over imperial management. And so basically the entire national security state is by design made to remove not only ordinary people, which like we barely get anything in the system anyway, but even Congress. You know, if you think about things that should properly be the function of a state, like, I don't know, researching what a state should do, that's privatized in this country to think tanks. And now that's just expanded to be privatized to the literal fighting of wars. And we basically have mercenaries. It's like Gustavus Adolphus traipsing across Europe. We have a mercenary army effectively. And so Americans, of course, they don't give a shit because they have no fucking say about what their country does in the world.
I see where you're coming from with that, but you know, maybe if we have more of a working relationship with these Russians, hardworking Americans who maybe own a business, who maybe are living, they have the space, they'll finally be able to buy the Sable that they want.
Not referring to anyone specifically, just someone. Yeah.
Business
Some
owner,
random American.
business owner, not like you would see him on the street and go, "That's a handsome guy," but you wouldn't immediately pick him for a business owner. You'd be like, "Oh, he's a bit over 6 feet. He's very confident." That's a guy who animals respect him. Everyone knows that. If he got two Sables, a brother and a sister, he'd have no problems. He doesn't have wallpaper, so they can't fuck that up.
There you go.
And he should be able to own two Sables because he loves them.
Well, the idea that democracy can only be multi-party voting is absurd anyway. I mean, and that's why Cuba really is such a good litmus test for like just how much if you consider yourself a leftist, like how much you've really thought about what it would mean to transcend capitalism. Is that the idea? No, it would basically be just the same, and you'd have all these different parties voting. Well, no, you would absolutely not, because these things only exist in the context of capitalism.
And one of the things that's happened in the U.S., particularly among people who like discuss what freedom means, is that since the 30s, freedom has been explicitly defined as political freedom, as opposed to economic freedom or social freedom or cultural freedom. And that really is part and parcel of the project, I think, to remove ordinary people from any form of decision-making in the United States. When you define freedom as essentially the right to vote, that's actually a very weak understanding of democracy. And everyone, remembers the two fingers of Iraq and the voting in 2006. I mean, was that freedom? It's completely ridiculous. And so you have this normative perspective that is never talked about when people like quantify these ridiculous metrics.
I mean, that's why everybody is now hyper conspiracy theory oriented, is because we're told every day that we're free and that we get to vote and that vote is validating our choices. And yet everything that happens is against our will, what we don't want, makes our lives worse. How is that to be explained? And there is no effort to square that. And so, of course, people are going to figure, well, there have to be people behind the scenes. And it's like, yeah, they are doing things behind the scenes. And one of the ways they're doing that is by promoting an idea of freedom that involves this ritualized participation in democracy that does not touch any of the actual meaningful questions of economic freedom and the destiny, literally, of the fucking people. Like, what's going to happen to the industrial base? What's going to happen to the culture in every way? Those decisions are not made at the ballot box, but we're supposed to allow the vote to stand in for a validation of it, even though there is no mechanism to enforce our will.
People dying and everything is awful, but like, let's not pretend this country gives a shit about that.
Oh no! I mean,
that's not paramount to like. That's not paramount to anyone. I'm sorry. It just isn't. It just isn't. If people dying was an impetus for any policy decision, there'd be a million fucking things we do differently. It's the last thing people actually worry about.
Yeah.
People talk about fucking people dying, and then they're fine. They're fine with private health insurance still existing. They're fine. Yeah. They're fine with
the way that we build cities, where we turn certain parts into war zones, where young men die at rates that they do in Syria and Iraq, we're fine with all of it. We're fine with the fucking meat grinder that we just send overseas every day. Even the people who hold all this up and go, I believe in science because I want to save freaking people's lives. No, you don't. That's not why. You just want to go to a restaurant because you're another American who, you want a consumer experience. That's really what it is. If people dying was the main impetus for you believing anything, you'd believe a whole lot of different things.
I mean, that's why I kind of doubt we're going to get any kind of significant lockdown. If death rates don't really climb along with new infections, we might just keep monkeying with the numbers and doing the public theater necessary to make people feel like they have that something's being acknowledged that gives them a sense of security to go out. But other than that, I think we're just gonna normalize.
If you live in a blue state, you'll get restaurant TSA where you put your fucking mask on to go to your table, you take it off, everyone's sitting down there with other masks on, then you put it back on to go to the bathroom. So it's now part of your consumer experience. You like that they've added that feature to the restaurant, that you get to pretend that you're taking this seriously.
Yeah, it's like going through the TSA to get a sandwich.
Yeah,
everywhere.
And then in a red state, they make a big deal about how they have the freedom of choice of not doing that. And then you can buy a sandwich from a place that is it's filled with shit that makes you sick and turns a woman's uterus inside out and turns your vas deferens into little shriveled vines. And the restaurant had to sign a pledge to Israel to even incorporate. But you're I have freedom. And it's all the same shitty place, but you have a different consumer experience for either of it. So it's fine.
Black Rifle 2 presents itself as a lifestyle brand, with its hats, t-shirts, and other flag and firearm bedecked merchandise accounting for more than 15% of the company's 2020 sales. At times, Black Rifle has explicitly presented itself as a trolly, Trumpy alternative to the Seattle Giant. When Starbucks pledged to hire 10,000 refugees to protest Trump's 2017 executive order banning visas to applicants from 7 countries, most of whose populations were majority Muslim, Black Rifle created a social media meme with Starbucks cups photoshopped alongside ISIS fighters. In 2019, after an Oklahoma police officer posted a photo on Facebook of a Starbucks cup that a barista had labeled pig, Best appeared on Fox and Friends, the Trump-beloved talk show, to announce that Black Rifle was giving the officer and his department enough coffee so they'll never have to go to Starbucks again.
But they will.
No, they will.
Everyone's got to go to Starbucks.
I would bet money that more of these guys went to Starbucks after that happened because it became part of the experience is being oh, I would hate it if a bisexual called me racist on my cup.
Yeah.
That would be the most exciting thing that ever happened to them. They probably went twice a day after that, hoping that would happen.
That's the whole thing of using Donald Trump as your name on the cup. It's to get some sort of frisson, to get some sort of energy out of the banal experience of going to get coffee that everybody has made part of their lives.
I mean, honestly, they should do something where Starbucks, if you work at Starbucks, they make you part of Screen Actors Guild and give you all the benefits and pay you way more, and you can play the part of the evil barista and be you can only get your 1,300 calorie frappuccino if you admit that God's not real, and then you can kill them. But there will be squibs. It will be squibs.
Yeah.
And every Starbucks employee makes $250,000 a year to do that.
But the lattes cost $100, and
they would still go. These pigs would still fucking go.
These guys, I don't know whether they're aware of it or not, but it is astonishing to me that how much they overstate how much a person like Kamala Harris is cares about fucking diversity in the CIA or what they're up to at all.
No, Kamala Harris is the only thing she cares about is why am I still underwater in the polls?
Yeah.
First of all, he doesn't have to worry about this because she's literally never going to become president.
I know, honestly. Get out of here.
Yeah, that's the last thing you have to worry about, buddy. Joe is the honeymoon's over a bit, but Joe's still he's in the black. He's still way more people approve than disapprove. They like it when he goes on TV and just the wheels completely fall off.
And the question is whether or not we should be in a position where you are. Why can't the experts say we know that this virus is in fact is going to be, or excuse me, we know why all the drugs approved are not temporarily approved but permanently approved.
Kamala, they're trying everything. They're recording as many slow motion videos of her walking as they possibly can, and just no one likes her.
Hey gang, it's Chapo coming in at you. Before we get into this week's show, I just want to just a little statement about our next guest appearance on the show. I mean, like, obviously, we don't often turn the platform of the show over to elected politicians. You know, a lot of people don't think that's our role, really. And, you know, honestly, it's not one that we naturally feel comfortable with. But occasionally, I mean, there are people in office who we support. We like them. We're friends with them. And if there's anything we can do on our show to, you know, amplify their message, to platform them, I'll do it. And, you know, like, so to that end, I would like to start today's show with a statement read on air from friend of the show, Louisiana's Representative Clay Higgins. Clay, would you spit, please?
We very much appreciate the tremendous outpouring of love and kindness over the past 10 days from the hundreds of friends and supporters who have reached out to me directly. I keep my family's private business very quiet because the evil in the world. We very are uplifted by the love of God's children, and quiet privacy does not mean secrecy. So here's the update. I have COVID. Nigga has COVID. My son has COVID. Becky and I had COVID early on in January of 2020, before the world really knew what it was. So this is our second experience with the CCP biological attack weaponized virus. And this episode is far more challenging. It has required all my devoted energy. We are all under excellent care, and our prognosis is positive. We are very healthy, generally speaking, and our treatment of every health concern always encompasses Western, Eastern, and holistic variables. I ask that my family's privacy be respected. Media inquiries should be directed to my D.C. office. I love and respect you all. I'm honored and humbled to serve you in Congress. Our mission will continue. My family and I will recover fully. Your prayerful support is felt deep within my family and will never be forgotten. Respectfully, Clay Higgins.
Thank you, Clay.
Well, sir, I'm really happy you're okay. I'm glad that you're combining all the types of medicine. That's the most important thing to do.
Yeah, I'm giving acupuncture to my crocodile.
I just a lot of details I like in that statement, but yeah, like Felix, the best part is combining all Eastern and Western types of medicine on the road to recovery. I mean, he is. This is the way of the shadow wolf. This is Steven Seagal type knowledge that weaves together the best.
He is a Renaissance man, very similar to Seagal.
That's what I love about Clay Higgins is like he zigs when you think he'll zag, because it's like sight unseen. If you're like, oh, Clay Higgins has a post about like COVID, I'd be like, oh, he thinks it's fake. But it's like, no, he's still holding on to like the Trump presidency era thing where it's like we're attacked by China.
Yeah.
But like, you know, is he going to say it's no big deal? No, he's going to like, you know, say that it's scary, but like he's like uniquely equipped to deal with it because he knows every type of medicine.
I'm making a poultice. You know, the key to a good poultice for your COVID is the root. You go get that root nice and dark. You go get that coffee color root before you apply the poultice. And that corona gonna be saying bon cherie.
We should just like have a year where he's president.
Oh God, yes.
Like who cares?
How about have a eternity where he's president?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like
God Emperor.
We have the Delaware version of Clay Higgins now.
It's true.
And it's like, you know, people are always writing articles that are like, why actually this is the best thing that's ever happened. Like, what would be different, really? He would do like a military parade, but it would be like big band style. He would have Delta Force guys like playing the washboard. Like he's fucking cool.
I tell you that good weaponized CCCP weaponized militarized virus so good it make the jackrabbit slap the bear.
It's time for Wilford Brimley from Hard Target to be president. I think we can all agree. I found the first paragraph of Dirty White Boy, the first book by Stephen Hunter I read in high school. 3 men at McAllister State Penitentiary had larger penises than Lamar Pye, but all were black and therefore, by Lamar's own figuring, hardly human at all. His was the largest count. Yep. His was the largest penis ever seen on a white man in that prison or any of the others in which Lamar had spent so much of his adult life. It was a monster, a snake, a ropey, veiny thing that hardly looked at all like what it was, but rather like some form of rubber tubing.
Damn.
Well, the Mark Wahlberg Antoine Fuqua film adaptation has already missed a beat by focusing virtually not at all on Mark Wahlberg's just sort of, I guess, half related giant veiny rubber hose.
It's a damn shame. If you look at Stephen Hunter's books, and they kept getting weirder, and I think you can really trace the alienation of like people who are broadly, fixated on like these notions of American heroism and competency, but who are also alienated from the government. They're going from being sort of generalized anti-establishment types, the way that Hunter wrote in the 80s and 90s, to being more like hardcore conservative ideologues as over time. And it really is because, the only real political question becomes one of your cultural affinities. And things like being a badass who really likes guns is coded in such a way that eventually, if you are like that and that like you care about that stuff, you kind of get trundled into, even if you don't want to, into being a conservative. So one of Hunter's more recent books, I think from 2011, is called Soft Target. And it is about Ray Cruz, who is Bob Lee Swagger's illegitimate son, and who took over for Bob Swagger in the books because, at that point, Bob Swagger's in his 60s. He can't be doing all the real hardcore action stuff. He's in the Mall of America when it gets attacked by Somali Muslim fundamentalist terrorists who start just shooting the place up. And he has to just go die hard on them. Meanwhile, outside, the incompetent police response to the shooting is being coordinated by Minnesota State Police Commander Douglas Abobo, the half Kenyan graduate of Harvard Law who got the job because of his fancy speeches and who doesn't know what he's doing and has to get schooled by Ray Cruz on how to really deal with terrorism.
Is this character a stand-in or something? I don't get it.
Douglas
I'm
Abobo?
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Okay. Yeah. So like he literally has an allegory where the America, it's called, in the book, it's called America the Mall, is under terrorist siege, and incompetent O'Bungler fucks it up, and it's up to a guy with a gun to save everything. And he also wrote a book with Bob Lee Swagger that is one of the most insane plots I've ever encountered. It's about a Yakuza boss who is in charge of like a lot of the pornography in Japan, who is seeking to possess the actual katana that was used to kill the bad guy in the legendary 47 Ronin tale, the real life version, so that he can wield the influence of it to take over the Japanese pornography industry and prevent American actresses from being used in it.
Okay.
They're undermining the purity of Japanese pornography.
Okay. I mean, the Stephen Hunter literary canon is, I think what we've really discovered in this episode is the most untapped gold mine for movies that I think we should produce and write.
We should make all of these films and books into movies.
Hey, greetings, everybody. It's Chapo coming at you. Excited for today's episode. A full deck. We are locked and loaded and ready to talk about Woodstock 99, Peace, Love, and Rage.
Gentlemen, I've got one thing to say, and that's I feel like shit.
This is the worst fucking documentary I've ever seen in my entire life. This is like in the first like 30 minutes, I was like, this is as good as Buckbreaking. And then in the remaining interminable 90 minutes, I was like, no, Buckbreaking is literally exponentially better. It's
less offensive. I'll give it that.
It is less offensive. Like it's made with. I unfairly said they were made with equal skill. No, this was made with less skill. They have no like interest in any like chronological continuity or narrative. Like their way of putting together like a narrative arc for a documentary is just to like show you the thing and then put piano music behind this. Like I'm convinced this movie was made by like the guy. This is made by the nephew of a guy who owns a like rights-free piano music company. I like everyone they interviewed in this was a fucking Sim or Oblivion NPC. Like they were just everyone they talked to was like falling into the skybox and rotating around. Everyone they talked to was such a fucking dumb piece of shit. Not even in an interesting way. They would when their brains ran out of words. They would just recount an individual event and go, and that's a perfect metaphor. They'd be like, oh yeah, someone was tabling for a gun safety thing, and then like someone smoked a bong, and if that's not a good perfect metaphor, I don't know what it is. A metaphor for what? What is any of this
America.
a metaphor for?
It's a metaphor for America.
I hate it so fucking much. I hate the people that made this. You should have to get a license from the government to make a documentary.
Well, like I said, we got a lot to talk about today. We are delving back into this one of the most glibly sensationalized pieces of cultural history I think I've ever witnessed, courtesy of producer Bill Simmons. And like that should have been a dead giveaway from the opening credits where this movie was going to go. But like I said, we're locked and loaded. And on mic today, we have resident music expert Chris Wade.
I will also be bringing my expertise as a music festival promoter and producer.
And, of course, we have Woodstock 99 attendee, Bryan Quimby of Street Fight Radio. Welcome back, my friend.
My one great achievement was that I decided to blow a whole paycheck and sit around and be hungry and dirty for 3 days back in 1999.
Well, Bryan, if that isn't a perfect metaphor, I don't know what is. Look, I'm someone in the documentary.
Well, Bryan,
and it's no coincidence that the guys who were dirty there ended up being the guys that stormed the Capitol.
I mean, in fairness, though, statistically, there has to be one guy who was at both of those events, right?
Yeah, and there's statistically someone who went to Lilith Fair and like incinerated Afghan villagers. What's the point?
That's true.
Like, who fucking cares?
That's very true.
Point?
So, and like he frames it in the like, he was like, 1999 was an interesting time, and I'm like, slow down, Dave. Slow down.
Yeah. Well,
I know, and he says it's interesting because like he was like, TRL and Carson Daly, like they were at the center of like popular culture at the time, which was defined by on MTV the clash between the kind of the boy band sort of like teeny bopper pop music and the kind of like angry cargo shorts, baseball hat wearing new metal crowd. And that crowd and Woodstock 99 was like the acts that were booked for it. This was sort of their, I don't know, last hurrah, or this was their cultural broadside against NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys. But like Dave Holmes was like, in retrospect, that we were playing with fire, and this was actually really scary and dangerous.
It's like that part. That's when I immediately knew what type of documentary this was, because it was like they were doing Waltz with Bashir about like a Killing Barney song being sung on a playground. It's like the implication there is like Backstreet Boys and NSYNC that represents all women and the flattened category of people of color. Just these groups of white guys who are molested by a blimp salesman. That's all the marginalized communities, and the worst thing you can do is like think that they're lame in 1999.
One thing I was thinking about of just how much culture has changed is like they show a clip of, I don't know, maybe it's one of the guys from The Offspring or something. They have like a facsimile of the Backstreet Boys, like little mannequins of the Backstreet Boys, and he's like bopping their heads off with a wiffle ball bat. And I was just thinking about like how much more fervent culture is invested in pop culture right now. If like, I don't know, one of the guys from like 21 Pilots did like an anti-pop thing and like knocked the heads off mannequins of like BTS at a festival stage right now, they would be assassinated.
Yeah, no, it would be
like
like
a fan army would send a pipe bomb to their house.
They wouldn't be safe anywhere on Earth.
No. There's no prison on Earth that could keep them away from the people that would want to kill them.
That shit was wanted that prison island that Aslan is on. If you told BTS fans that he like said Jimin sucks, they would break into it and kill him.
Another, I thought, like kind of glib and a little offensive, like bit of like cultural commentary they did in this movie, is that they really go to great lengths to contrast the rock music of Woodstock '99 with Kurt Cobain and Nirvana.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, if Kurt Cobain hadn't killed, if the CIA hadn't murdered Kurt Cobain to make America misogynistic, like grunge would have saved America. Or like if only the Riot Girl scene had lasted a little bit longer, we could have like stopped Gamergate from happening. And look, like, you know, I love Kurt Cobain's music. I think Nirvana's a great band, but like I just didn't like the way they were using like Nirvana and particularly Kurt Cobain's death to like really like shit on where music had gone like in the 5 or 6 years after that. And just hold it up like grunge was this moment that could have cured or saved America from like this dark path that we've embarked on now.
Well, that is the thing about the Riot Girl and like punk scenes and everything. There were no men who commit rapes in those. There are no male predators in those. In fact, angry music is the only music where male predators are.
Yeah,
I mean, as a
Fugazi didn't have to
teenager-
stop every show they ever did to tell their fans to knock it off because they were being too violent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's only nu metal and of course DMX who got the whole ball rolling.
Right, as one of the dumbest teenagers in the whole world at the time, like I didn't, and Kurt Cobain talks about this in his suicide note. I didn't know that shit was political or feminist or anything like that. It just sounded like rockin' tunes at the time. and like it doesn't feel like such a weird jump from that to nu metal. I mean, that's the jump I made. I was into like Nirvana and Stone Temple Pilots and stuff like that. And then I heard the first Korn album and I was like, fuck, this is music actually like made specifically for me, because I had really liked rap when I was younger, but it kind of moved away from it and gotten into like the Doors and Nirvana and stuff like that. And like the music was about like they were mixing hip hop, which also gets them in trouble in this documentary. When Moby brings up that, like, yeah, there were like all these white rappers, but they took all the bad stuff with hip hop and they made it their whole thing. And it mixed rap with metal. And that's like what people liked, you know? Yes, it wasn't like specifically political, but like neither was Minor Threat really. Wasn't political. Like a lot of these bands would have never called themselves political. Scott Weiland was not like a politics guy or a feminist or anything.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, if you imply that people commit violent acts because of music and it awakens something evil in men that wasn't there before, then you have to argue the other way that it also has a uniquely civilizing effect, which is, I think, even more insane.
Yeah. Well, that's
that's save the world.
Like these guys have musical journalists. Like I think they have some fantasy that they don't even recognize to themselves, that if you champion the right art, it will lead us to an Aquarian age. And I think that's a fantasy that we've all been stuck with since the fucking 60s, because all other avenues of political change are denied. So people just have to sustain the fantasy that there is some combination of sounds and images that people could be exposed to on a mass scale that will cause some sort of phase shift in consciousness. Mm-hmm. And that their job is to encourage the good stuff and to condemn the bad stuff. And then maybe through enough of them doing that, they will They will create that resonant frequency that makes us all good boys and girls.
Remember how Radiohead was able to stop the Iraq War? Like, what are you talking about, man? What the fuck are you talking? It's like, I would accept these positions if these were all hippies who, like, they overdosed on mids at Woodstock in the 60s and have just been woken up and are left with the same, like, idiotic delusions. The world has not disproved to them enough yet. But, like, after Vietnam, after everything, after the 80s, after everything, like, what? How can you still think that? You can only think that if that's the only thing keeping you from thinking that you're wasting your life.
Yeah, I mean, to the earlier point about like Limp Bizkit, like did they cause a riot or not? I'll just mention that when Bill Haley and his band first did the first ever live performance of their song "Rock Around the Clock," it was in Germany. It was considered like one of the first rock songs of all time, but it absolutely led to a riot of German teenagers, and that was the song "Rock Around the Clock." 1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock led to a full-scale riot of German teenagers.
No, yeah, that's why they like the thing with Germany. Like, why are they like that? They can't handle like anything. They are working very closely with DARPA to figure out like the perfect hertz for the EDM that they allow Germans to have. Because anything that would be like, you know, even David Guetta, like that would be like the Fourth Reich. If the Germans had fucking, you know, Oh Sweetie Baby in 1953, they would have annexed France again. It's just too much for them. They're like ADHD kids. Like it's not their fault. They're just like that. They're just like that. Like if Matt hears, that's why Matt doesn't really listen to music. It would make him too excited.
That's true. I can't handle it. I get overstimulated.